Conservation of momentum. An important step was taken by John Philoponus, an Alexandrian thinker in the 6th century. He suggested that the bowstring imparted a certain quantity, later dubbed impetus, to the arrow, which kept it moving for a while before eventually dissipating away. A simple suggestion perhaps, but an important move from thinking in terms of forward-looking purpose and replacing them with properties that exist in the moment. Philoponus' idea was developed further by Ibn Sina Avicenna, an 11th century Persian polymath. It was Ibn Sina who took the crucial step of arguing that impetus is not just temporary. Every object has a certain amount of impetus, equal to 0 for a stationary object, some larger number if the object is moving, and the amount remains constant unless a force somehow pushes on it. In this new picture, the reason why rocks and coffee cup come to rest is not because that's their natural state, it's because forces, friction, and resistance gradually degrade the impetus from the body. In the vacuum of empty space, Ibn Sina suggested there would be no air resistance, and a moving body would keep moving at a constant velocity in perpetuity. This was a wildly speculative thought experiment 1,000 years ago, but today we regularly build spacecraft that move between the planets at basically a constant velocity, apart from the gentle tug of gravity. In the 14th century, French philosopher Jean Buridan proposed a mathematical formula for the impetus, equating it to the weight of an object times its speed. What we have here is the birth of a law of physics, conservation of momentum. The rough idea of some quantity of motion being conserved came along before anyone could pinpoint precisely what the quantity was. This is a standard story of progress in theoretical physics. We put forward a new concept, work to characterize it in quantitative terms, then take that quantitative expression, an equation, and as how it comports with other phenomena we observe in the world. Today we know that momentum is mass times velocity, at least until relativity comes along and complicates things a bit. One problem with Buridan's definition of impetus as weight times speed is that weight isn't an intrinsic property of an object, because it depends on the amount of gravity pulling on it. Your weight would be lower on the moon than it is on Earth, and you would be weightless if you were in spaceship coasting between the planets. Mass, on the other hand, is an intrinsic property. Roughly speaking, mass is the resistance that an object has to being accelerated. It takes a lot of force to accelerate a high mass object to a certain speed, and only a little force to accelerate a low mass object to that speed. Similarly, speed and velocity are subtly different. Speed is a number, a certain number of meters per second, whereas velocity is a vector, a quantity with both a magnitude and a direction. In fact, the magnitude of the velocity vector is precisely what we call speed. But the velocity also points in some specified direction. So you have the same speed if you're driving north at 90 km per hour as you do if you are driving south at 90 km per hour, but your velocity is different. We denote vectors by drawing little arrows over an appropriate symbol. So the velocity of an object is typically written v. We very often care about the size or magnitude of a vector, which is written with the same symbol but without the arrow. The magnitude of vector v is simply v. The arrow notation makes sense because we often represent a vectorial quantity by literally drawing an arrow that points in the direction of the vector, and whose length is proportional to the magnitude of the vector. Alternatively, we can represent a vector in terms of its components, the contribution it gets from different directions. If you are traveling exactly northward, the component of your velocity in the east or west direction is 0. It is easy to add factors together. Just imagine placing the beginning of the second factor at the end of the first, so we define a third resulting factor by traveling down the first and then the second. If the two factors we are adding together point almost along the same direction, the total factor will be almost as long as the sum of their magnitude. But if they point in almost opposite direction, the resulting factor can be much shorter. Buridan and his predecessor didn't think in terms of factor, which were gradually developed by a number of thinkers in the 19th century, including German mathematician August Ferdinand Mobius, of Mobius strip fame, Irish mathematician William Rowan Hamilton, German polymath Hermann Grassmann, and English mathematician Oliver Heaviside, so it's no surprise that it took a while to get the right definition of momentum. These days, the momentum factor is usually denoted P. The letter M is reserved for mass, so we take the symbol from Latin word for momentum, petere. With all that in mind, the expression for momentum is the simplest thing in the world. P equal mv. Our first official equation. The momentum factor points in the same direction as the velocity factor, and their magnitudes are proportional. Proportionality will be a crucial concept for us. It means that a multiplicative change in one quantity implies a multiplicative change in the other. If you double the velocity, you double the momentum. The factor relating the two is called the constant of proportionality, although in the sum equation it might not actually be constant. In this case, it is. It's just the mass of the object. The power of even a basic equation like this should be evident. We're not saying that the momentum of some particular object just happens to be equal to its mass times its velocity. We're saying that there is a universal relationship between momentum, mass, and velocity, which always takes precisely this form for every object. When relativity comes along, some of the explicit forms of the equation we'll see here are going to have to be tweaked, but the basic principles are largely the same. An equation like this has no causality built into it. It is a rigid relationship between the quantities involved, and it reads equally well, left to right or right to left. We can manipulate the equation in any way that does the same operation to both sides, such as dividing by m to get p divided by m equal v. We can therefore say, if I know the velocity of an object, I multiply by its mass to get the momentum. Or equally well, if I know the momentum of an object, I divide by its mass to get the velocity.